Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I had just finished a long day of tinkering with an automation system when my phone buzzed. It was an incoming video call from my older sister, Bridget. I sighed, half expecting it to be some urgent matter, but also dreading it. Bridget had always seen me as someone to turn to when she needed something, but never as someone worth her genuine respect. I clicked the accept button. Nora. Finally! Her voice was frantic, and there was an unmistakable air of annoyance in her tone. Hey, what's up? I asked, wiping my hands off on a rag and sitting down on my office chair. Listen, I need your help. Like, now, Bridget snapped. I need to get access to some policy documents for a summit we've got coming up. The whole thing is about to blow up, and I can't get them out of the damn system. I leaned back in my chair, already sensing where this was going. Okay, what's the issue? Don't play coy with me, Nora. The system's locked up. Can you just fix it? This is important. She shot me a look that I could practically feel through the screen, like she was humoring a child rather than speaking to an accomplished engineer. I closed my eyes for a moment, resisting the urge to snap back. What's the system called? She started rattling off some jargon, nothing that was remotely familiar to me, but it didn't take long for me to recognize the encryption patterns she was describing. I hadn't thought about it in years, but I had designed that system during a project with a think tank that had recently been acquired by one of the bigger companies in tech. Bridget, of course, wouldn't have any idea. She never did. I held in a sigh, masking my irritation. Okay, I know the system. I can help, but it'll take a bit. Perfect. Great, yeah, whatever. Just do it. I need this fast. Her impatience had always been her most defining characteristic. I set down my phone for a moment, accessing the back-end system on my console. The familiar encryption algorithm I had designed years ago popped up on my screen. Without skipping a beat, I entered the necessary overrides. The access was unlocked. It was almost too easy, considering how long it had been since I last worked on it. I sent the decrypted files over to her. Done. It's all yours. But I've got a hard stop in about 10 minutes, so you should be good to go. She barely acknowledged the effort, her attention already on something else. Thanks, Nora. Now, if you could send me the updated budget for the Seattle event. But before she could finish, I cut her off. Bridget, that's not what I do. You want the numbers? Ask the finance team. Her face twisted into a mock smile. Right, of course. You're the tech wizard. God knows, you're great at fixing toys. Her words hit me like a slap, though I didn't let it show. This was the same old dynamic. Every time I helped her, I solved problems. But all she ever saw me as was her personal tech support. It had always been this way. The fixer in the family, quiet, invisible, easy to take for granted. Sure, I'll let you know if I need anything else, she said quickly, and before I could say another word, she disconnected the call. The screen went black. I sat there for a few seconds, letting the irritation simmer beneath the surface. It didn't matter. I knew exactly what she thought of me, and that's how it would always be. Just an invisible support, never truly seen, except when there was a need, and I was okay with it. Or at least, I had been. A ping from my inbox caught my attention. It was from the legal team at Kronos Solutions, the company behind the acquisition of Titan Forge Robotics, my company. As the sole founder and majority stakeholder, I'd kept my involvement legally low-key. At least that's what the world thought. The email wasn't a regular update. It was a notice that I needed to finalize the acquisition papers. I opened the attachment. There was a single line of text that made my stomach tighten. You're needed to sign off on the acquisition papers. It wasn't that I had forgotten about the acquisition. It was something I'd planned years ago, long before the thought of taking Titan Forge public or the company's widespread success. But what did feel different, what made my heart race a bit, was the timing. I wasn't just a small player anymore. I had built something massive. Titan Forge had become the unseen powerhouse behind some of the biggest innovations in robotics and AI. The company Bridget's firm, along with the higher-ups at Kronos, had been scrambling to secure for months. And now, it was mine. The irony of it all hit me then. My sister Bridget still had no idea that the system she just used to save her summit was part of my empire. And when she realized it, well, she would have to learn that her little sister wasn't so little anymore. The soft hum of my office was punctuated only by the sound of my fingers typing on the sleek glass surface of my console. From my office, I could see the sprawling Seattle skyline, the shimmering reflection of the city's innovation district dancing in the glass of the Titan Forge Tower. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows, but I had no intention of leaving anytime soon. As I sat there, reviewing the merger documents for Titan Forge's acquisition by Kronos Solutions, I couldn't help but reflect on the years I had spent working in the shadows. To the world, I was Min Tran, the quiet, enigmatic figure behind Titan Forge Robotics, a company known for its cutting-edge innovations in AI and automation. But to those closest to me, especially Bridget, I was invisible. Or worse, I was the afterthought, the quiet sibling who no one truly saw. The irony of it all struck me as I clicked through the acquisition papers. Bridget, unaware that the very company she was working to secure for her political campaign firm was the one I had built, had once again reduced me to a support role, tech support. For years, I had endured her dismissive comments, always the butt of her jokes, always the one mocked in front of the family for my little workshop projects. Thanksgiving a few years ago echoed in my mind. The jabs had been sharper that year. Nora's out in her little garage again, Bridget had said, her voice dripping with condescension as our parents and cousins laughed. The stinging remark had cut deep, but I'd swallowed it, as always. Family, right? You have to take the hits if you want to be included. And then there was the constant theme. My work wasn't real work, not like hers. Bridget, the high-powered political strategist, the woman with the fancy office and the business suits, was the one my family always praised. And here I was, making things move and shake behind the scenes, never once taking the credit. But that was about to change. I had spent years building something quietly, too quietly. Now, as I reviewed these final documents, I realized it wasn't just a company I was finalizing today, it was the final chapter of my own invisibility. I was done hiding behind legal names, done being just Min Tran in the public eye. Titan Forge was now poised for a massive shift, and I was ready to step into the light. With a tap of my finger on the screen, I signed off on the final acquisition documents. The legal part was done, but the real work, the personal part, was just beginning. The email I drafted to the team at Kronos was simple but clear. Bridget will handle the closing ceremony. She's already prepped and ready for the final presentation. I could already imagine the look on her face when she discovered who would be watching her presentation from the front row. I took a long breath, looking out at the cityscape beyond. My name, Nora Tran, had been buried for too long under layers of legal documents, behind the veil of Min Tran. Today, everything was going to change. Bridget would soon see just how much the world had been underestimating me. The soft glow from my office windows reflected the skyline in front of me, a visual metaphor for everything I had built and hidden. Soon I would reveal myself, not just as the invisible sister, not just the quiet worker in the background, but as the force behind Titan Forge Robotics. And when the dust settled, it wouldn't just be my company that had changed, it would be the way my family saw me and how I saw myself. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the moment settle into my bones. No more shadows. The time for silence was over. The next chapter had begun, and it was mine to write. The first rays of light crept over Seattle as I pulled into the Titan Forge parking garage. The building loomed above me, sleek and imposing, its sharp angles catching the early sunlight like the edge of a blade. My heart wasn't racing. No, I had long since learned how to hide that, but something in my gut felt like it was stirring, like the calm before a storm. Inside, the glass and steel of the tower were both a reminder of how far I had come and how much I still had left to do. I'd spent years building Titan Forge from the ground up, a company known for its innovations in robotics and automation. But this was the day everything would change. Today, the acquisition would officially go through. The boardroom at the top was where the deal would be sealed, where the final signatures would be signed. I barely noticed my assistant, Yuki, as she approached with my green tea, her presence an anchor in the chaos of my mind. She handed me the cup, offering a quick smile. "Good morning, Nora." "Morning," I replied, accepting the tea without looking up from my console. It was all I could focus on at the moment. The deal, the signatures, the next steps. But as I took a sip, Yuki dropped a new piece of information that made me pause. "By the way," she continued, her voice quiet, "Bridget called again, several times. She's looking for MT Tran." She paused, watching me. "She said she's going to go through you if she doesn't get through to him soon." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound hollow. Bridget had been chasing a shadow for days, unaware that MT Tran was the very name I'd buried myself under in legal documents. The idea of her going through me to reach a fictitious CEO, well, it was amusing. It also spoke volumes about how deep the illusion had held. "Let her try," I said softly, not looking at Yuki. She still doesn't know the game is already over. Yuki raised an eyebrow, but before she could respond, she handed me the internal reports I'd requested. There's something else. I was going over some internal reviews from the consultants working with Bridget, and I noticed a few things. Yuki said, "It seems like she's been stealing credit for a lot of the work done by the junior staff. Some of them even filed complaints, but nothing's been done about it." I skimmed through the report, my eyes narrowing. Bridget had always been quick to claim credit for other people's work. It wasn't the first time I'd seen it, but it stung all the more now. After everything she'd said, after all the years of undermining me, she still hadn't changed. She was using her position to climb higher, while leaving others behind. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice tight. "At least a year," Yuki replied. "But with the acquisition going through, it's likely no one wanted to rock the boat." I set the report down on my desk, the anger building beneath the surface. There were a lot of things I had quietly tolerated over the years. Bridget's mockery, the lack of recognition from my family, the way she belittled my work. But seeing her take credit for things she didn't do, especially when it affected people who had been working hard under her direction, was the final straw. "Bridget is about to find out what it means to be underestimated," I said, almost to myself. "And she's going to learn just how deep my involvement really goes." I closed the report and stood, making my way to the elevator. The final meeting of the acquisition was only a few hours away, and as I stepped into the lift, I felt the weight of what was to come. The truth was about to be revealed, and there was no turning back. Yuki followed me to the car, offering one last glance. "Are you sure about this, Nora?" she asked. "About letting her think she's in control for just a little longer?" I looked at her, a smile playing at the corners of my lips. She's not in control. She never was. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft glow over Seattle as I made my way to Titan Forge Tower. The crisp morning air seemed to match the cool resolve I felt settling over me. Today wasn't just about signing documents or handing over a company. It was about reclaiming my place, about stepping into a world that had, for too long, seen me as nothing more than a footnote in someone else's story. As I entered the building, I was greeted by the sleek metallic walls that seemed to hum with purpose. The design of the Titan Forge headquarters was calculated for impact. High ceilings, panoramic windows, and a monolithic steel table at the heart of the boardroom. Every inch of it screamed power, dominance, and prestige. For years, it had been a backdrop to my quiet success, a space I had built without drawing attention to myself. But today, that was all about to change. I stepped into the elevator and hit the button for the top floor. Bridget was already on her way to the meeting. She always arrived early to hold court with her junior associates, ready to assert her dominance. And today, I knew, was no different. When I arrived at the top, I made my way to my office, standing at the glass window for a moment, gazing at the city spread out below. The thought of Bridget's continued ignorance of my involvement made me smile, albeit coldly. She thought she was preparing to meet some faceless foreign CEO. She thought she was in control, navigating the intricacies of a high-stakes deal. What she didn't know was that I had been orchestrating this entire acquisition from the start, while she had been busy with her political campaigns, leveraging relationships, and taking credit for other people's work. Now, the day of reckoning had arrived, and Bridget was about to learn that the mysterious CEO she had been dealing with was none other than her own sister. I tapped a few keys on my console, bringing up the security feed of the boardroom. Bridget was there, holding court, her voice a mix of rehearsed professionalism and condescending advice. She was lecturing her junior associates on the importance of image, emphasizing how critical it was to impress the mysterious foreign CEO, who would be in attendance later that morning. Her words were laced with the same familiar arrogance. She had no idea how close the CEO actually was. Her lecture grew more intense, and I noticed how she dismissed one of her junior associates with a sharp, cutting remark. I wasn't surprised. She had always treated people as tools for her own advancement, never once considering the impact of her actions on those beneath her. I watched for a moment longer, then stood from my desk, a calm determination taking over. Bridget was about to learn just how wrong she had been about me. With a measured step, I walked toward the boardroom, the sound of my heels echoing through the empty halls. Every step brought me closer to the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment where I would finally let her see who I truly was. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the need to confront her with words of fury. No, this was about something much bigger. It was about power, control, and the quiet strength of a person who had been underestimated for far too long. As I reached the door of the boardroom, I paused, taking a breath. Then I pushed it open. The moment Bridget heard the click of the door, her head snapped in my direction. The color drained from her face. The boardroom was set. The steel table gleamed under the fluorescent lights, casting sharp reflections of the city below. I had arrived early, my mind sharp, focused. This was it. The final moment in a game Bridget never knew she had been playing. I stood at the head of the room, watching as Bridget and her junior team huddled together, whispering among themselves. They had no idea what was coming. Bridget's smug expression, the one she wore when she thought she had everything under control, was still firmly in place as she instructed them on the importance of presenting a unified front to the mysterious foreign CEO, the one she believed was coming to make the final decision. As I looked at her, I couldn't help but remember the countless times she had humiliated me, her cruel jabs at family dinners, the insinuations that I was nothing more than a hobbyist tinkering away in a garage. She never took me seriously, always too busy climbing her own ladder to acknowledge that the foundation she stood on was built by people like me, silently, in the background. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even frustrated anymore. I was calm. I had built this empire not with noise, but with precision, with deliberate steps, and now it was my turn to reveal the truth. With a simple tap on my console, I pulled up the files, the documentation Bridget had submitted for the acquisition. There were several glaring inconsistencies. At first glance, everything seemed flawless, but a closer inspection revealed a pattern of misattribution. Bridget had claimed responsibility for technical reviews that, in reality, had been completed by junior staff. She had taken credit for their hard work, and today, I would expose it. I stood up and approached the table, my heels clicking softly against the polished floor. The junior associates turned their heads in surprise, unsure of what was happening. Bridget, still unaware, was busy adjusting her notes. When she finally looked up and saw me standing at the head of the table, her eyes widened for a brief moment before narrowing in disbelief. I didn't waste time. I walked around the table, opening the digital report I'd prepared. Before we proceed with any further discussions about the future of Titan Forge Robotics, I began, my voice steady and clear, let's take a look at the real contributions that have been made over the past few months. The room fell silent as I clicked through the documents on the screen. One by one, I revealed the names of the junior staff who had done the actual work, the ones who had been overlooked, who had been marginalized, and most importantly, who had been erased from the credit list. Bridget shifted in her seat, her hands gripping the table. Nora, she started, her voice defensive but faltering. This isn't... I cut her off, not out of malice, but with the quiet authority that had been growing inside me. No, Bridget, this is exactly what it looks like. You've taken credit for work you didn't do. The technical reviews you presented, not yours. The credit goes to the junior staff who were too easily overlooked. I paused for a moment, letting the tension in the room rise. The junior associates exchanged glances, some uncomfortable, others eager for an explanation. Bridget tried to speak again, but I raised my hand, stopping her. I understand you wanted to position yourself as the expert, I continued, but this is no longer about image, it's about truth, and it's about fairness. I turned to the screen again and pulled up an email chain. Here's the evidence, I said. You've been taking credit for their work for months, while they've been doing the real legwork. How does that look to you, Bridget? Bridget's face had gone pale. The sharp edge of her confidence was slipping away, replaced by uncertainty. I didn't mean to, she stammered, but even as she spoke, I could see the cracks in her facade. Her bravado had faltered, and for the first time, I could sense genuine fear. I didn't let up. You will not get away with this. There will be immediate ethical reforms. Credit reassignment, beginning with the engineers and consultants who actually made this deal happen. I stood tall, my words deliberate. Bridget, your position in this company will change. You'll be removed from any future dealings regarding Titan Forge Robotics, effective immediately. The room grew colder. Bridget's mouth hung open, but no words came out. Her usual capacity to argue was gone, replaced by a sense of powerlessness that was almost palpable. I turned to the legal team, who had been quietly watching in the background. The acquisition documents are already signed, I added, keeping my voice calm. Everything you need to enact these changes is already in place. The room was still, as Bridget's reality crumbled around her. She tried to regain her footing, but I could see the panic starting to settle in. This was no longer her moment. This was mine. The boardroom fell into an uneasy silence after I finished presenting the ethical reforms and credit reassignment. Bridget, her face pale, still hadn't said a word, but the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. She was still processing everything, her world coming apart at the seams. I could almost see the panic beginning to swell behind her cold, composed exterior. As I straightened my back, preparing to close the session, Bridget's voice cut through the silence. "You can't do this," she blurted, her words sharp but shaking. "You think you're the one who can come in here and destroy everything I've worked for?" Her outburst was as predictable as it was misplaced. I had expected her to try to fight for control, to claw her way back into relevance. But what she didn't seem to understand, what she never had, was that her fight wasn't with me, it was with herself. "I'm not destroying anything," I said, my tone measured, calm. "You've done all the work for me. You've exposed exactly who you are." Bridget's voice grew louder, more desperate. "You're just my sister Nora. You're not the CEO. You don't have any right to make these decisions." A small laugh escaped me, not out of humor, but because I realized how deeply she was drowning in her own delusions. "That's where you're wrong, Bridget." I leaned forward slightly, fixing my gaze on her. "I've been the one making decisions all along, and I'm the one who has the final say now." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Her face flushed a deeper shade of red, and she stood up abruptly, pushing the chair back with a force that made the sound echo in the cavernous room. "This is ridiculous," she spat, glancing at the junior associates in the room, eyes wide with a mix of fury and disbelief. "Do you all really think you can just replace me like this?" I stayed seated, still holding the room's attention. My team was quiet, watching her unravel, as I slowly took control of the narrative. It wasn't about anger, it was about facts, and the facts were on my side. "I don't need to replace you, Bridget," I said softly. "You've done that all on your own." Her jaw clenched. "You think this is over, Nora?" Her voice cracked slightly, a sign of how far she was losing her grip. "You can still play this game," I said, my voice low and unwavering. "But you're not the player anymore. Not here, not today." Bridget's lips trembled as she turned to face the door, her pride refusing to let her admit defeat. But she didn't leave, at least not yet. "Go ahead," I said, standing up now, walking around the table toward her. "Try to argue, try to reclaim your position. But know this, the boardroom is legally recorded. Everything you say from here on out is on record." I let the weight of my words sink in, knowing it would keep her in check. She froze at the mention of the recording, the final nail in her coffin. The color drained from her face, the last vestige of her control slipping away. "Do you really want to risk your reputation?" I asked. The question hung in the air, its implication clear. "Or do you want to step back and let the real work begin?" Bridget stood there, trapped between her need to win and the reality that she had already lost. She deflated, shoulders slumping as her resolve crumbled. The fire in her eyes dimmed, and her fight finally went out. I, she started, but the words didn't come. She had no defense. No answer. I turned to the team, my voice firm and authoritative. "This is your moment. You're the future of Titan Forge Robotics. You're the ones who've worked hard and deserve this. Take this opportunity and make it your own." The room was still, but I could feel the shift. The junior staff, once overlooked, now stood taller in their seats, their confidence beginning to rise. They were no longer just following orders. They were now part of something much bigger than they had ever imagined. They had a voice, and today, it was being heard. Bridget turned to leave, her face a mixture of disbelief and defeat. As she walked toward the door, her steps heavy, I felt no need to say anything more. She knew she had been bested. It was over. With a quiet sense of satisfaction, I watched her exit the room, but my attention quickly returned to the future ahead. The company was mine now, and with it, the opportunity to shape something new, something real, and for the first time, I felt truly in control. The city skyline glowed in the soft golden light of the evening. I stood at the window of my penthouse, looking out over the sprawling city below, the steel and glass of Titan Forge Tower reflecting the setting sun. The acquisition was complete. Titan Forge had officially moved into the hands of Chronos Solutions, but I was the one who held the reins. A ping broke my reverie. I picked up my phone, seeing messages from my family. Most were shocked. Some were proud. Bridget's message stood out. It was short, almost terse. "I'm sorry for all of it." I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of those words. The apology was more than I had expected, though it wasn't the grand gesture of reconciliation I might have imagined. It was, however, a step, a small but significant step, for Bridget. She had finally seen me as something more than the sister she could push around. It was a beginning, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I tapped my screen and began typing a response to her. Next family dinner is at my place. Bring your junior staff. They've earned a seat at the table. The words were deliberate, not just for her, but for everyone. For years, I had been the one forgotten, the one overlooked. Now, it was time to bring those who deserved recognition into the light. My junior staff, the ones who had worked tirelessly and without thanks, would be honored. They had done the real work, and now they would be seen. I placed the phone down, taking another slow sip of the green tea that had been a constant companion during this journey. The quiet of the room settled around me, but inside, a quiet sense of triumph filled the space. My mind wandered to the days leading up to this moment, the countless hours spent in silence, building, creating, and watching as others took the credit. I had built Titan Forge Robotics, not with loud declarations, but with precision, with care, and with a quiet strength that had been my greatest weapon. Now, the world could see it. I walked over to my console, tapping a few keys to start a new recording. I hadn't done a public message in years, but now felt like the right time. Sometimes, I began, the words flowing effortlessly. We're underestimated. We're told we don't fit the mold, that we're not the ones who matter. But what people forget is that we build in silence. We don't need validation because we already know what we're capable of. I paused, looking out at the city once more, a smile tugging at my lips. Let them discover you when you're already at the summit. Let your work speak for itself. With that, I finished the recording. The message wasn't for anyone specific. It wasn't just for Bridget or for my family or for the staff who had overlooked me. It was for anyone who had ever been made to feel small. It was for anyone who had been written off before they had a chance to show what they could do. I sat back, the weight of everything that had happened settling in. There was no anger, no desire for vengeance. There was just a quiet peace in knowing that I had built something real, something that was mine, and that was enough. As the night descended on Seattle, I sent one last text to Bridget. Next family dinner. You're welcome to bring your colleagues, but understand, they'll be seen, just like I was today. The city was quiet, but I could feel the power of everything I had accomplished building like a current, deep within.